Secretary Fudge would have been impressed with that response this morning. We're all awake. A couple of items for all of you before we get started. This afternoon, the President will take a virtual tour of a Proterra electric bus and battery manufacturing plant in Greenville, South Carolina. He'll be joined by the Republican Mayor of Greenville, Knox White. Knox White is his name, underscoring the bipartisan support for the clean energy infrastructure investments in the American Jobs Plan. During the visit today, the President will make 3 stops around the manufacturing plant and speak to employees about different aspects of the company's work, including battery installation, body assembly, and final inspection of the buses. The American Jobs Plan includes a total of $45 billion to accelerate the adoption of zero-emission transit buses and school buses to achieve the President's goal for all U.S.-made buses to be zero emissions by 2030. This includes $25 billion for zero-emissions transit vehicles and $20 billion for electric school buses. There are currently 475,000 yellow school buses, that sounded like a lot to me, that serve 25 million children, and 95% of them are powered by diesel. And there are nearly 85,000 transit vehicles, including buses, that still run on diesel or gas, which are linked to asthma and other health problems that hurt our community. So replacing these buses with clean technologies will create good jobs, support domestic manufacturing, tackle a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, and improve the health for many around the country. Also this morning, our COVID coordinator, Jeff Zients, had his weekly call with governors. He announced that this week, 28 million doses will go out across channels, with the vast majority going to jurisdictions. This is consistent with last week's allocation. He also reminded the governors that there is a significant amount of vaccine supply in the system, and the federal government stands ready to help states put shots in arms as quickly as possible. That, Jonathan, why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Jen. Just a few minutes ago in the Oval Office, the President spoke about the trial of Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. He says, quote, "I'm praying the verdict is the right verdict." And he says, "I think it's, quote, overwhelming in my view." So I have a couple of questions on this, if we could start there. What precisely did the President mean? What is overwhelming? And does this mean the President thinks the police officer should be convicted on all counts?
Well, the President has clearly been watching the trial closely, as many Americans have been. He was also moved by his conversations with the family yesterday. He knows the family, and as somebody who has been impacted by grief himself, that was a large part of their conversation, the conversation he had just yesterday. As he also noted, the jury is sequestered, which is why he spoke to this, but I would expect that he will weigh in more further once there is a verdict, and I'm not going to provide additional analysis on what he meant.
You're not able to clarify what is overwhelming, the evidence, the case presented by the prosecution?
We're not going to get ahead of the outcome. I expect when there is a verdict, he will have more to say.
Okay. Well, as you say, the President made note that he only spoke out today because the jury was sequestered. But of course, everyone else in Minneapolis and around the country could hear what he said. They'd be in a position to hear what he said today. We know there are worries about unrest. Is there now concern that the President's words could add to that if the, quote, right verdict is not reached?
Well, first, I would say that regardless of the outcome, the President has consistently called for peace. And our focus, as we're working with state and local authorities, is on providing the space for peaceful protest. And that will be consistent regardless of what the outcome of this verdict is.
Okay, and then one more on this. The judge overseeing the case was pretty harsh language yesterday, sort of asked politicians to not weigh in on the matter. Is there concerns now that the President's comments could be grounds for an appeal or even causing a mistrial?
Well, I wouldn't. I think those were comments the judge made yesterday. Again, the jury is sequestered, which the President also noted in his comments. He certainly is not looking to influence, but he has been touched by the impact on the family. Hence, he called the family yesterday and had that discussion. And again, I expect he will weigh in further once there is a verdict.
Go ahead, Kristen. Thank you, Jen. Just to follow up, the President has talked about the importance of an independent judiciary. Why is it appropriate for him to weigh in on the verdict, even though the jury is secluded?
I don't think he would see it as weighing in on the verdict. He was conveying what many people are feeling across the country, which is compassion for the family. what a difficult time this is, what a difficult time this is for many Americans across the country who have been watching this trial very closely. The jury is sequestered. That is different from where things stood just yesterday, and he noted that in his comments as well.
He did call for the right verdict, though. Why is it ever appropriate to have any type of characterization before the jury has a say, especially for the president?
Again, we're going to wait for the jury to come to their conclusion, and that is when he will have more extensive remarks about the outcome.
This administration, this president has been very clear in condemning rhetoric that it sees as adding to a climate of discord. Is it a double standard to not condemn or speak out against the comments by Maxine Waters, even if she didn't mean to imply violence?
Well, first I would say that the Congresswoman has provided further clarification of her own remarks, and I would certainly point you to that. And if we're looking in this scenario, we're looking at a family who has lost someone. They've just watched a trial. They've seen the video play over and over and over again. Families across the country have watched the trial, watched the video play over and over again. Clearly, the impact of trauma and the exhaustion is on communities of color around the country more than it is on others. And the president recognizes this is an extremely painful issue, and of course, sympathizes with everyone who feels the grief of George Floyd's passing, as well as the killings of so many other people of color at the hands of law enforcement. And, I think having a conversation with his family yesterday, as someone who has been through trauma himself, that was a big part of their conversation, as I believe George Floyd's brother also conveyed. You feel it deeply in your heart, and I think that his comments were a reflection of that.
And very quickly, I know there is a lot of focus on trying to get the George Floyd legislation passed through the Senate. It's passed through the House. Where does that stand, and will the president move that effort up in terms of his list of priorities, particularly as he approaches his 100th day in office?
Well, first I would say that addressing policing across the country, addressing what he feels, racial injustice, what he feels is one of the 4 major crises we're facing as a country, continues to be a top priority for the president. And certainly moving the George Floyd bill forward through the Senate, the president would be eager to have that happen and eager to sign that bill into law. And he is not only kept abreast of it, he remains engaged in it with his team here and also directly. Go ahead, Josh. I'll come back to you, Kristen. Go ahead, Josh.
May I ask for an update on the president's goal to reopen schools? Is his goal still by the end of this month to have majority of K-8 schools open at least one day a week? And if so, do you think he'll hit that goal? And to what extent is the administration worried by some of the more recent outbreaks we've seen among older age students tied to these new variants of the virus?
Sure. Well, our goal remains to have the majority of schools open 5 days a week. And that is certainly something that is being led, that effort, by our Secretary of Education. And they've been providing regular updates. There's numbers that we look at on a month-to-month basis. We remain confident we can reach that goal. They're also, because of the CDC steps that they put out publicly, seems like months ago, maybe weeks ago is more accurate to say, we know that those measures are effective and they can help mitigate risk in schools. And our Department of Education and also, of course, is working very closely with schools on implementing those and ensuring kids can be safe, but we remain confident about our path to reaching that goal.
You're pleased with the progress so far. To what extent are you concerned that rolling closures are going to drag into the fall? This is a core promise of the president to get schools open where he can.
Absolutely, and it remains a core promise. It remains something that his Secretary of Education is leading the effort on. I think the last data we've seen was from February, I believe, because of the reporting requirements, which showed that there was an increased number of schools that were open and also an increased number of schools that were open 5 days a week. And so we feel we're on the right track. And these mitigation measures, including wearing masks, including taking steps to provide social distancing opportunities, the money that's going out the door to schools and school districts that need that assistance are going to help us continue to make progress.
And with regards to your comment around the call with governors today, as you know, of course, the production of J&J has been relying on that one plant in Baltimore coming up. The J&J is now no longer citing its goal of delivering 100 million doses by the end of June. They're saying they'll deliver 100 million, but they're not saying when. How does this impact the president's goal? Of course, it was the availability of those shots that led him to say that every American there'd be enough shots for every American by the end of May. What is his current goal? And do you think that plant will be online soon, given the FDA is involved in it?
Well, of course, that's going to, with the second part of your question, of course, it's going to require FDA approval. As you know, there's a meeting on Friday to determine what's next as it relates to J&J, and hopefully we'll learn more then. We'll see. But our goal, we remain confident in our ability to meet the needs that we feel will be out there in the public by the end of May. And we will have enough vaccine for every American by the end of July without J&J. That is based on the supply that we've ordered from Moderna and Pfizer. And Pfizer, as I know you've probably seen, has also announced that they are going to work on expediting their own manufacturing and delivery of their vaccine. So we are confident we'll be able to meet the demand in the public. Now every American over 16 is eligible to receive the vaccine, and our focus is on continuing to encourage people to get shots in their arms.
Sorry, one other quick one. There was a report yesterday in the Journal that the administration is considering reducing the amount of nicotine that can be in cigarettes and also restricting or banning menthol cigarettes altogether. Is that something you can update us on about whether the administration favors either of these positions?
I have seen the report, of course. I don't have any policy proposals to preview today. We will review a range of policy options in line with the President's public health goals. But to reiterate, there are no policy proposals or decisions to review today. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. One more question about the comments from
Sure.
Congresswoman Waters. The House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy is accusing her of inciting violence, and then you had the judge yesterday calling her words abhorrent and saying that she was being disrespectful of the rule of law. I just want to be very clear here. Does the White House condone the Congresswoman's comments?
Well, first I would say again that the Congresswoman clarified her own comments. And what I can do is speak for the President's view, which is that it's important to provide a space and an opportunity for peaceful protest, but protesting should be peaceful. That's something he has consistently advocated for, and he will, regardless of the outcome of the trial.
She was calling on some protesters to perhaps get more confrontation.
And she's had additional comments since then, right?
Yes,
Okay.
she has.
Which
But-
provide
so-
additional
but I guess-
clarification.
But I guess my question is, does the White House believe that those kinds of comments are helpful in the middle of this trial that everybody knows could lead to more violence and unrest?
Well, again, I can speak to what the President's point of view is, which is that it's important to provide an opportunity for peaceful protest. That's what he's continued to advocate for, what he's consistently advocated for. But I would also say that when somebody provides a clarification for their comments, that's an important context to include in anybody's reporting.
I'd also like to ask a question about, since this is 420, as Senator Chuck Schumer said from the Senate floor, he called it the unofficial American marijuana holiday. And he said that he now supports legalizing marijuana on a national level. Is this something that President Biden would support?
Well, the President supports leaving decisions regarding legalization for recreational use up to the states, rescheduling cannabis as a Schedule II drug so researchers can study its positive and negative impacts. And at the federal level, he supports decriminalizing marijuana use and automatically expunging any prior criminal records. He also supports legalizing medicinal marijuana. So that's his point of view on the issue.
So if the House and Senate pass a bill legalizing marijuana at a federal level, would the President sign it?
Well, I just have outlined what his position is, which isn't the same as what the House and Senate have proposed, but they have not yet passed a bill. Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, one final question, if I could. Some people in prison on marijuana charges are asking President Biden to keep his campaign promise and release them. Where is President Biden on keeping that campaign promise?
Well, I think when I'm talking about rescheduling cannabis as a Schedule II drug, so that is also going to have an impact on the criminal justice system as well. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. It's clear the dividing lines on the traditional infrastructure portions of the president's job and infrastructure package are the paid-fors. The president says he's willing and open to compromise. Republicans seem willing to support new and higher user fees for Americans who use roads, bridges, and airports. But the president has insisted that such fees violate his campaign pledge not to raise taxes on Americans earning less than $400,000. Is the president's idea of compromise just adjusting the corporate tax rate, or is he willing to budge on these user fees?
Well, first, the president's pledge, which you touched on, which he outlined on the campaign, and he's reiterated since, that he's not going to raise taxes on people making over $400,000 a year. He's not going to budge on that pledge. So that is a line in the sand for him. But this package and this proposal is really about creating millions of jobs. It's about investing in and modernizing our nation's infrastructure. It's about ensuring that caregivers have the support they need. It's about providing broadband access to Americans across the country and leveling the playing field. That's what the discussion should be about. He believes it should be paid for, and there are really two options. Either you put the burden on the backs of corporations that can afford to pay more, or you put the burden on the backs of the American people. He's happy to have a debate about that particular issue.
Cool. Democratic lawmakers are calling on the Biden administration to scrutinize potential bank mergers more aggressively, arguing the Justice Department has approved too many, leading to higher fees for consumers and reduced access. Is the White House looking at this issue, and does it share those lawmakers' comments, concerns?
Well, we've certainly seen the comments, and the president supports competitive markets and thinks robust competition is good for consumers and for innovation. He has appointed and will continue to appoint highly qualified people who are focused on vigorously enforcing our antitrust laws. That's one of his objectives he looks at. Of course, the Department of Justice, which handles these mergers in collaboration with the banking agencies, are probably the right sources to look to for additional content or comment.
Sure.